You go ahead and take your seat and refresh your coffee. Glad you're here. Sorry we've taken a little bit longer. We've had some technological challenges, but I have the last Mac that was produced in Russia, so it's just a little slow and we're working. But as I mentioned last time, one of the things we want to address as a community is entrepreneurship is just not a young person's activity. It's not necessarily a startup activity. It's an activity. It's a way to solve challenges, regardless of the age of a company or the age of a nonprofit. So in that light, I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Lucas Ramirez of the Gathering Place.
Awesome. Thank you, Skip. I appreciate that. It is so wonderful to be here with you all this morning. And I want to tell you an entrepreneurial story today. And this story started a little over 35 years ago right here in this community. And it actually was started by some local teenagers at the time. Teenagers that saw a need. And that's usually what draws us to an entrepreneurial movement, right? We see a need and an opportunity, and then we're inspired to innovate within the need and opportunity and the skill set that we have to offer to meet those needs. And a little over 35 years ago, there were some local teenagers in this community that saw a need to reach their peers. They saw a need to reach students that were just like them, that didn't have a connection and relationship with God. And what started over 35 years ago with some local teenagers who went to some local adults because they realized they didn't have all the resources that they needed to be able to launch something to reach their peers, began into what we now know as the Gathering Place, a student mentoring and leadership development organization that has a over 35-year legacy of reaching not only the Golden Isles, but our entire region. So those students went to Bill and Ida Walker, who are still with us, St. Simon's residents, and they said, can you help us start something to reach our peers and reach our fellow students? And so they began a program that is now called the Main Event, which was purely a summer Sunday night outreach. So they would gather on a Sunday night, they'd bring in a speaker from somewhere, and then they would have fun and games and skits and a dynamic message with music and everything involved. Then that began to grow and evolve, and over the years, and more programs were added, and the mission was expanded, and staff were added, and now, over 35 years later, the Gathering Place is a dynamic, innovative organization that reaches over 10,000 students each year through a wide variety of programs. Our mission is to reach, equip, and send. We want to reach students with the gospel. We want to equip them as leaders, and we want to send them to go serve their communities. Whether they're going to be a banker, lawyer, teacher, maybe pastor, whatever it is, we want them to go with a heartbeat to be servant leaders within the community. When we talk about economic development and holistic community development, one of those things is businesses and startups and all that, but as well, we need students that are graduating from high school, right? We need students that are going to be entering into the workforce. Workforce development is a major key piece that we need to think about because the businesses that are starting need those employees. And so at the Gathering Place, we see ourselves as a key part of entrepreneurial acts in our community because we're fostering the next generation of leaders. Today, there is a massive need in our community. According to 2009 statistics, Georgia was among the lowest 8 states in our country with graduation rates. There's some fresher statistics in 2009. As early as 2014 numbers, we still rank among the lowest 3 or 4 nationally among all demographics, Latino, Black, White, Asian. And the need, that's just one marker, of course, graduation rates, but it points to a lot of other things happening in the community. So we exist to reach those students, to equip them, and then to send them. We want to spark in them a vision and a hope for life. We want to reach them and tell them that, hey, you have an identity and a purpose that is so deep, and you can walk into that. And that becomes the moral foundation, the groundwork, the compass, the North Star that ends up leading them. So this story that started with a few local teenagers who went to some local adults and pioneered a new, innovative, something that didn't exist before in this community, has continued to grow and evolve, and now has an over 35-year legacy right here in our hometown. But the story continues to evolve in really exciting ways. As the director, God has given me really interesting opportunities to connect with other leaders in our state. I was given the opportunity to participate in Leadership Georgia in 2013. I served on their leadership team this past year in 2016. And through some of those relationships and connections, the gathering place caught the attention of Governor Deal. And if my PowerPoint was working today, I'd show you the quote about how he talks about how the gathering place is an organization that is exactly what Georgia students need, and how we're inspiring in students and in our communities a desire for growth and innovation and hopeful graduation rates, and pursuing the God-given gifts and talents that those students have. So from some of those relationships and contacts that we've had, that became a spark within our organization to think about expansion. These state leaders, through some of these relationships, came to us and said, we love your model, we love what you're doing. In fact, we studied through some of the conversations with Governor Deal. Governor Deal shared with me that the state of Georgia pays $90,000 at the time. That was a 2013 number. Those numbers are over 100,000 now, per juvenile delinquent that we house for 1 year in this state. Think about that, over $100,000 a year for one student. It costs the state of Georgia around $30,000 to house one adult inmate. So over 3 times the cost to house a juvenile inmate. So we did a little bit of research into who we work with, because a lot of our programs, and I don't have the time to share with you our wide program offering of how we reach these thousands of students, but some of our initiatives work specifically with at-risk kids. The kids that are already getting into vicious fights and ending up in jail and are already kind of going before the judge, and they're on the fringe. They're about to be entering into the juvenile delinquent system. And so we're working with a lot of those students. And so we looked at our roles, and we looked at all the students we worked with, and over the last 15 years, we have saved, we're calculating, of millions of dollars to the state of Georgia by keeping students out of the juvenile delinquent system. Part of the reason why the governor and other leaders are going, hey, we need more of this happening in different pockets, boosting our graduation rates. Let's not be one of the lowest states in our country. Let's boost that. Let's go. Let's build Georgia up, developing our workforce. So we took that challenge quite seriously. And we said, yeah, you know what? We've been here in coastal Georgia with a regional impact, but we see that we could be impacting on a broader level. We see that we could have a broader impact. And so, like I said, that was a spark in organization to take expansion and replication of our model very seriously. So over the last 3 years, we have started to do some heavy lifting internally to strengthen our headquarters, to strengthen our home base, to prepare ourselves for launching. We've also identified what a potential launch site, what are the criteria of a new community that we want to step into? What are the elements that we're looking for? What's the magic? What's the special combination and chemistry that we want? As we think about innovating and moving into this entrepreneurial space of launching a branch office for the first time. And so it's been a long journey over 3 years, but we are more ready now than we ever have been. And we continue to build momentum. And right now, our projected launch date for a new Gathering Place branch office is the fall of 2017. So it's been a long time coming, but we didn't want to rush into anything. We wanted to do it right And we wanted to protect the 35-year legacy that is here and strengthen what we're doing here while we're expanding to serve other cities within Georgia, because the need continues to be great. And we want to be able to meet that need. So, as the stories continues to unfold, I was excited to come here and appreciated so much the invitation, Dr. Mounts, to be here, because we have some challenges that and questions that I wanted to pose to you today, specifically as it pertains to our expansion strategies. And again, if my PowerPoint was working, I'd have them neatly for you here so that we can they can stay before you. But basically, these are some of our questions. I know that in this room is some knowledge because some of you have started your own businesses. Some of you have potentially opened up new branch offices. Some of you have gone through what some of these challenges look like. So we're coming today as a student mentoring and leadership development organization that has been challenged and taken this challenge seriously to expand and grow, to build our community and our entire state. And we want to do it as effectively as possible. So what are some of the pitfalls that we need to be looking out for? What are some of the challenges that you've encountered in the past that you would say, hey, you really need to look out for this? Specifically, one of the other questions I want to pose to you is, how have you seen some best practices, or how have you seen some incredible success in developing collaborative partnerships with other entities, whether similar entities or not? Because one of the heartbeats of our organization is to not just replicate something that already exists. We don't want to just start doing something that wastes extra dollars on something that is being done 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And so we want to enter into communities, and we want to be in a community where we are giving and taking and having a community-wide strategy for what we're doing. And so completing one another in the community. So how have you seen that be successful in other ways? So as we're looking at expansion, how would you counsel us? How would you challenge us? What are some ideas that you'd have as we move in that direction? And of course, I'd like to field any questions that you might have just overall about the gathering place.
If I could swipe mics and you could use that one. Do we have any questions, observations? We have.
Have you identified what you think maybe only works in this area versus other areas? So what you can transfer and what might not transfer or might have to be changed?
Absolutely. We have, at least we think we have, right? So when those students that I told you about, they started that program I mentioned that's called the Main Event, which still happens now every Sunday night during the summer months. So every Sunday, if you have never seen it, I invite you to poke your head in the back at Epworth by the Sea at Strickland Auditorium. Imagine 1,000 middle school and high school students packed in the room with lights, videos, music. It's a free event. And it's one of our flagship programs and has been happening continuously. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of effort. And we have seen incredible success for that program. And I think that that is actually the program where it would make sense to think, hey, this is one of your most successful programs. Lead with this as you expand. And that's actually the program where we've said we would like for that eventually to happen because of its broad reach, because of its expansive draw. But at the same time, culture has changed over the last 35 years from when that began and has taken anchor and root in our community. And so the Main Event is actually part of like maybe phase 3 or 4 of a potential expansion strategy. So I think that that's one of the programs that we have that I'd point to that would say, okay, this is ingrained in the culture here. It may be difficult to just transplant that. So that's one of the areas that I think. But yeah, thank you.
Do we have
Hi. I was just wondering, my son's involved in a youth group with his church, and so he spends time at the gathering place. But I was wondering how kids find this event. I mean, do you work with the schools or Boys and Girls Club or, officers? I don't know. How do you find these kids that really need you that might not be on their own making an effort to go? How do they get a ride? How do they find you?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. Of course, that's a challenge, getting in front of the students. We do partner with Boys and Girls Club. We partner with FCA. And a lot of the student organizations that exist to spread the word. We partner with youth groups. Our hope is that that event, it's totally free for youth groups, totally free for students. We hope that it's a tool that they use to go, hey, let's bring a little bit more energy and momentum for this free event. We do use a lot of word of mouth. We also, we love the students reaching students model. And so during the summer, we'll have anywhere from 75 to 100 local high school kids who are interns with the Gathering Place. And so we leverage those 75 to 100 high school kids to invite their friends. We use social media. We do mailings. We try and do a lot of different things. On some level, it's taken some momentum on its own, and it's not like, hey, it'll keep going by itself. Obviously, it needs continual stoking. But some of the programs have, over time, become sort of a part of the culture. For example, our 707 program. We have a program called 707. It's a decentralized network of mentor groups. And we have over 650 local students involved in a mentor group through this program, with over 130 local adults just like you that mentor these kids. The unique and cool part about this program is it's a 7-year mentorship commitment. So I would love to talk to you if you're interested in possibly mentoring a kid. Just know that it's a 7-year commitment before you come talk to us. So we have over 130 local adults that have made that commitment, and some of them are re-signing up for a second term. And so this past year, we actually didn't market that program, believe it or not, because we're trying to prune it, and it's getting to a size where we need to bolster the structure to sustain the growth. And we had almost 120 kids sign up for that program, and we didn't do one social media post, one email, one announcement from stage, nothing. So in some ways, word of mouth is a big piece of what we do too, but it's a multi-pronged attempt that we have, that we try to take.
Is there another question? Rick?
Yeah. You mentioned Governor Deal and what you're thinking about, the graduation rate, everything else. Are you guys thinking about expanding up the coast and up to North Georgia, or, kind of?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the communities that we're targeting right now is actually West Georgia, Southwest Georgia. So we wanted to find communities with great need. We wanted to find communities that weren't too large either. We wanted to find communities that had similar of the chemistry that we have here, a small college, to be able, because we leverage the college student population to mentor high school kids. So these are some of the mixes. So we're actually have a very strong alumni of ours who's a cardiologist in Thomasville, who, as we're having these conversations, he got really excited about sort of being kind of the founding chair of a gathering place in Thomasville. So that's one of the communities we're working with right now. So yeah, and they have increasing gang activity happening right now. So as a community, they're trying to kind of get ahead of that before any of that takes some certain root. And phase 1 of our expansion strategy is our campus ministry initiatives. So we work to mentor some of the most at-risk kids in the schools. We walk in the front door of the schools. We say, "Give us your worst kids. Those are the students we want to mentor." And the teachers go, "Thank you." There you go. And so that's part of our strategy of expansion and replication. So.
Is there no? Yeah. Okay. Good.
As you expand, how do you plan to differentiate from competition like Young Life?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I think that one of the things that differentiates us, to my mind, is a little bit of an intangible, and that's specifically the DNA that this organization has to be this collaborative unifier bridge builder. I've worked at this organization for 6.5 years in its 35-plus year existence. And part of the reason I came to it and I was drawn to accept the position was because of the passion for unity that has been in this organization forever. Even our staff is incredibly diverse. I'm Hispanic. I'm originally from Argentina. Maduro Day, I want to recognize, is our Director of Discipleship and Programs. He's here with us. And then Chris Dockery is our Associate Director of College Ministry. And then Jack is one of our year-round interns, a fellow. And so even our staff is very diverse. And so one of the things that differentiates the Gathering Place to me to some of the other student mentoring and leadership development outreach sort of organizations is our desire to come in and bring a holistic community-wide strategy to what we're doing rather than being siloed. And I think that it requires somebody to lead the way and have those conversations, because right now the status quo is we all just stay in our pockets and our silos, and we may be cordial and we may, have touch points. But to me, communication and collaboration are two totally different things, and we don't want to settle for either of those things. We want completion. There's a Harvard Business Review diagram that's been a driving force for me that I picked up early in my professional career. And it shows that when relationship and strategy grow, you get into this completion space. If you just have relationship, you move away from competition into communicating, because we have a relationship with one another. We're talking, we're communicating. If all you have is strategy, you move away from competition into cooperation, which some people settle for and think we're doing this thing together. But what we need is relationship and strategy simultaneously growing, so that we're not just communicating, so we're not just cooperating, we are completing one another, because our communities are systems. We are living organisms. And that's one of the intangible visions that we carry with us as a replication aspect. Some of the more programmatic elements of how we would be distinct, I think the workforce development, leadership development internships is something that some of the traditional FCAs and Young Lifes don't carry. We definitely have the heartbeat for evangelism, like FCA and Young Life do, and we want to mentor students. I mean, to us, a relationship with the Christ is paramount and the foundational for the rest of your life. But then we want to build and add on a few of these other things. So a few other ideas as well, but for time, those are some thoughts that we've been working on.
How are you guys funded?
So it's individuals like you that love what we do and support the mission, where the majority of our funding comes from individual gifts and donors. We also work hard to write grants from foundations and some corporate sponsorships as well. And then churches also fund some of us. So the vast majority is individual gifts. And then grants, corporate sponsorships, and the traditional avenues. We don't have any government contracts or anything like that for funding. So, yeah.
Well, we thank you for coming today.
Yes,
Very
thank you
good.
so much.
Our next gathering is January 4th. We have at now one presenter. Susan Bates would like to stand up before you and do what she does so well. Glad you could come. Hope you have a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you.